Human beings are searching for the personal experience of reality. They are seeking to come to understand themselves, to find a reason for their own existence.
And so you go round and round and round, ever chasing the illusion that there is something outside yourself, outside your here and now, to be attained that will make things better.
No guru, no method, no teacher, and no nothing else either.
Okay, welcome everybody. We have a special guest with us today. We have Bita Rad. Bita, how you doing?
I'm doing so good.
I'm so happy to hear that. This is like the right out the gate question for everybody. What are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for experience. I'm grateful for the good, the bad, the ugly. I'm grateful for the ability to be able to experience them all, to be able to put them into a prism of experience.
I like how you articulated that. Like the prism concept is awesome. Holistically evaluating my whole life and seeing like the total package of everything and how it plays into the present moment, and like acknowledging and respecting all parts of my journey is so crucial. And I find it troubling it sometimes when certain people in new age circles are like, well, forget that past, detach from that. And it's like, I need to change my relationship to it. I don't need to disassociate from it.
Exactly. I think, the experiences that you go through all serve you one way or another. As ugly as some of them might be, they happen for a reason. And had you not experienced that, your prism would be a little bit more, limited. So I totally resonate with that. I don't believe that you should detach in that way, in the way of forgetting, or in the way of denying, or avoiding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the prison element of it too, prism, because it's like every experience is like a different spectrum of light essentially, and it all makes up like the rainbow pattern. That's a very cool way to describe it.
Yeah, I'm actually a really visual person, so I've been told that a lot of how I speak constantly paints pictures. So I mean, that's just how it works in my head. So it only makes sense that I give the prism example.
Yeah, I dig it. I tend to be that way as well with lots of things. So it's cool to talk to somebody else like that. What quotes do you feel most moved by? And could you explain what they mean to you?
Yeah, of course. I have so many. One of the biggest, one of my favorite quotes that I've heard recently from, his name is Dr. Michael Bernard Beck, I believe. He's the founder of Agape here in Los Angeles. He said that instead of the physical, instead of identifying yourself as a physical, you are a place through which the infinite experiences itself.
Mm.
And taking that idea to the next extreme, it's kind of giving yourself permission to experience everything that you experience, because you don't attach it to who you are. It's just you are a place, and the experience is happening through you. And the other reason that I really love that quote is because it also just kind of gives you the permission to release all of the blockages that you have of what's possible. Um, if you're a place, and if you're not a thing, if you're not a person, if you're an identity, or whatever you define yourself as, I'm a painter, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, whatever. If you stop identifying yourself as that, and instead you identify yourself as a place, the possibility of experience is really infinite. You're no longer limited to do what you do. Anything is possible. So that is one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, that one's really heavy.
Yeah.
I like really like it. I've definitely said that like I'm here to have the raw Cessna experience before, so I can really identify with the concept of it like being more of a place. And the thing that came to my mind is there was like an ancient philosopher Heraclitus, and he talks about like no man can step in the same river twice because they're completely different. And it's almost like the place we are as people is like a river where we're constantly flowing through these experiences. And like, I don't know, I really like that concept. It's like fluid. I really dig
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it kind of allows you, it gives you, I like the word, it gives you permission to just be in witness of what's happening instead of attaching meaning to it that helps you identify yourself, because ultimately that's not self-serving. So, yeah, that quote really, really resonated with me. But there's a lot of other ones, I love the idea of allowing things to be and then connecting the dots in hindsight. I think it was Steve Jobs's speech at, I think it was Harvard's commencement speech, or one of the universities, where he had his commencement speech, and he was talking about how he took a calligraphy class, that he didn't know why he was taking. He just wanted to take it, and then he later on was able to use it as a font when he was creating um, Apple computers. So the idea that everything that's happening, you allow it to happen um, the way that it does, if it feels authentic to you, and then realizing that eventually the dots will connect when you look back. I think that's definitely applied to me in my life, and um, it's a constant daily exercise for me to remember that everything that's happening, allow it to happen. If it's authentic to me, if it's something that I want to do, I give myself the permission to do it, because I'll figure out why later. And I
Mm.
always have.
There's a lot in that quote and your connection to it that I really like. So like the whole allowing thing is something that is like my goal for the new year, is to allow life to happen to me in lots of ways, like get out of my own way. There's a synchronicity in the fact that you're the second person in a row interview wise who's mentioned Steve Jobs, and like nobody else really has. So I really have to maybe try to understand that more. And then the whole thing of like going with what feels right and then looking back and like finding why that was important later is like
Mhm.
such a crucial part of my own journey. And like looking at everything, I had to experience everything that I experienced to be where I'm at now. And there is nothing that's so little or unimportant that it didn't impact me in some way. And
Yeah.
also, I feel like the more that you cultivate that mindset of like incorporating the totality of your experience into your being, the more you can learn about life. Because I learn sometimes what I perceive to be deep philosophical concepts from like really mundane, minute
Yeah.
things, but
Yes.
it's like earth
Those are the
shattering.
most like mind blowing dots to connect. Something that you hear all of your life, and then you get to a point of understanding or growth where all of a sudden, when you hear it again, you hear it completely differently. And you're like, okay, I get that now.
Hmm.
So, yeah, that resonates for sure. Another quote that I really, really love, and I heard this one the first time. Our mutual friend Brandon Beecham, told me. I don't remember what I was going through, but we were talking, and he said, things don't happen to you; they happen for you. And um, although I always knew that, the way that it's worded is just, I feel like it resonated completely differently. That they happen for you. I think it's a small shift in words, and it's a huge shift in perspective. And I think that um, a lot of people have a hard time believing that, because they go through a lot of really hard things. A lot of horrible things happen in some people's lives, and it's hard for them to say, well, how's this? It's easy to say, how's this happening for me?
Hmm.
And um, and that just takes me down this whole other path of understanding, which is that ultimately everything that is happening really truly for you in this life is to um, rid you of resistance. You may have a really hard experience in this physical life, and the point of this experience is to constantly shape you into a less resistant being,
Mm.
um, allow you to kind of detach from beliefs that you have that that don't serve you, that are separatist, what I like to say, separatist beliefs, that you are different from someone else, that this experience is different from you, or who you are, so that you can get to a point of understanding it, get to a point of ultimate empathy. And I think definitely the word empathy goes hand in hand with that quote, that things happen for you, not to you. When you get to a point of empathy, true empathy and understanding, you realize that, you're not that different from the experience. You're not that different from the person that you're resisting, or the occurrence that's happening in your life that you feel like is so not in alignment with you.
Hmm.
That, I don't know, that quote really resonates with me. I think about that all the time.
No, that really helped me a lot as well. Like, especially in recovery, I used to blame so many instances in my life, whether it be my experiences with police, significant others, parents, all this stuff was, how could they do this to me? And then like looking at it as how did this, why did this happen for me? And you, like you said, it's connecting with empathy. It's like developing compassion. It's helping me remove obstructions, learning lessons, like developing experience, and then ultimately it switches me from the position of victim of circumstances, which is this is happening to me, to this is happening for me. It can make me an advocate to say I've been through these circumstances. This is what I was able to do to learn from it, to shift my life because of this. And like that was really fundamental in my growth in lots of ways, was that whole mindset for sure.
Yeah, I think, when you take yourself out of that position of victim, you gain power. When you think to yourself that something has happened to you, or that you're a victim of something, there's no power in that. There's nothing you can do, right? But just by definition of victim, it's something that's happened out of your control. So I think that mind shift is huge when you gain the power, when you give yourself the power that, this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me, and I'm choosing this experience. Why am I choosing this experience? Suddenly you have control over how it goes and what the results are. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, learning to take responsibility for my own thoughts and reactions and how I deal with situations. Life is way different than when it was always, why did this person, like, I don't know. Life is so much easier, like allowing life to happen and then filtering the lesson out of it. I think all those quotes kind of blend together in lots of ways.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think also the other thing is, and this might really resonate with human experiences. I think a lot of the time life gives you a lot of things you feel you might not be ready for, and in hindsight you realize they were good for you. And the more that you resist those experiences as they're happening because you don't have all the dots connected in advance, the more you kind of deny yourself of all the good things that are there for you to have, all the good experiences that are there being offered to you that you just don't see as good offerings, therefore you resist. Um, I know in my own experiences, for example, right out of college, I got an extremely big opportunity to move out of the country and to go work in Singapore, in a position that was way higher than at the time what I thought that I should be hired for. And I wasn't ready. I was just like, no, 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 I need to be this, and I can't be that already, and I can't be there already. I need to go through all the steps before I get to that part in my career. And I agreed, and I tell this story all the time to everyone, but I agreed at the time to take the position for 3 months because when you move to another country for a job, the resignation period is 3 months. You have to tell them 3 months in advance before you want to leave. And so I told my boss, I'll take this job and I'm going to resign on day one, just so that I'm going to be there for 3 months. I'm going to experience this, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to be right on the part of the train that I feel like I need to be on before I get there. And so ultimately what happened was that those 3 months turned into 5 years, and I leaped leaps and bounds in my career. And And that was all due to going with the flow. You know, I think a lot of the time lessons are there for you to learn, and experiences come up that are there to give you more than you feel like you're asking for. And when the resistance happens, it's almost like you're resisting the good. You're resisting what you're asking for on a subconscious level, or maybe your higher self is what your higher self is asking for, and you're not there to receive it, you know, because you're so tied to the way that you feel things should be going.
Mm.
So there's definitely a lot of growth that happens in going with the flow and connecting the dots in hindsight. You know, that's it's huge.
Absolutely. I was just talking to someone the other day about how most of my discomfort in life currently comes from me trying to exert control over situations that I ultimately have no power. And instead of letting situations just flow as they should, I'll try to put my influence or push harder on certain things than I should. And it creates frustration, or sometimes like it is resistance. It's just another expression of resistance. It's like resisting what life is coming up with, and me thinking that I can change certain things. It's just a different expression of it. I feel like it's neat how that works out overall, I guess. It's also really cool that you ended up being in that better situation for much longer than you anticipated, and kind of just got comfortable with the wildness of it, I guess, or like loved yourself and like gave yourself enough credit to stick with it.
Yeah, I think it was a lot to do with letting go of the resistance, you know? It goes back to what we were saying earlier of just more that you resist. I feel like the more that you resist, whether it's good experiences, bad experiences, any experiences, really, I think the more that you resist, the more that you're limiting yourself from growth. There's something to be learned in every experience, right? You don't have to know from the beginning what there is. Sometimes it's much more beneficial to just jump in, you know, jump into the deep end and see what happens. Um, yeah, I have another quote actually. I don't know if this is a quote, but it's an idea. I listen to Abraham Hicks a lot. She's one of my favorite people to listen to. And years ago, I can't. I wish I could find the recording and I would pass it to you to put into this podcast. But she talks about how you, whether consciously or subconsciously know it, are giving yourself, your higher self, a constant idea of what you want. So you're constantly telling your higher self, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. Ultimately, this is where I want to be, this is what I want to have. And constantly, your higher self is taking these pinging signals and and navigating you through paths to get you there. Her idea, which really was kind of a paradigm shifting thing for me in my life, was that your higher self kind of serves as this inner GPS system that's constantly moving you towards these pinging signals percent of where you want to be and what you want. And it's taking you there through all of these experiences, which you identify as good or bad or ugly or great. It's really just your inner GPS guidance system getting you to where you want to be. Now, the more you have this resistance, the more you constantly resist these experiences, the harder you make it for yourself to get there. So, yeah, that's been a really big thing for me. Just like identifying each thing that's happening as a stopping point or just a passing point on the road that my higher self, my inner GPS system is taking to get me to where I've established I want to be.
Hmm. I can definitely relate to that. It's one of those things that like I think can be uncomfortable at first, because sometimes what I have to do is counterintuitive to what I think I should do. Like this week, I'm really trying to finish this Kindle version of my book, and like I was stressing out about it and putting this deadline on it and trying to push through it. And my inner, like higher self, inner self, whatever it is like, dude, you need to relax. Like you can't do this. You can't keep pushing and putting this amount of stress on yourself. I'm like, no, I need to do it. And now like I'm in a place where I'm like, it'll get done. It doesn't have to happen when I think it should. Just chill and like it connects me to the fact that sometimes I need to pause, I need to relax, I need to rest, and other times I need to go and like I need to learn to listen to myself better.
Yeah, yeah. I think don't we all? That's a lesson for everybody. I think sometimes when you're pushing for something to happen and it doesn't, the best exercise is just to be like, okay, it's not happening. It's happening the other way. Let's see why. Let's just see. Let's see why it's happening that way. Let's see what my so-called GPS system, my inner guiding system, has in store. You know, like what it's planning for me. That's different from what I in my physical self am planning for myself and seeing as the best way to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking of like an expression of this concept in a different light maybe a week or so ago, but like thinking about how our conscious thought that we've developed is like a symptom of our culture in some ways, but we also have this inherent like ancestral memory of how to navigate situations. And so many times, like it's our anxiety and our fear that we operate on that steers us off course of where like our intuition is
Mm,
taking us. And it's so weird because like I
yeah.
have to get in this space where like I'm kind of afraid of doing what the right thing is because I've been become so conditioned to thinking that listening to all these millions of years of evolutionary guidance
Mhm.
is wrong. It's incredibly
Yeah.
uncomfortable at first. For me, it was at least.
Yeah. I think, yeah, no, I totally get it. I think, a lot of the time, what you or your culture or your bubble or whatever it is have identified as good for many, many years doesn't resonate with you as a person. I can speak for myself. There's a lot of things that I feel have been taught as the path for my life, for my lifestyle. And they just don't resonate. And the true courage comes in saying, this doesn't resonate with me. I don't know for sure that I'm right. I don't know if what I want is right or wrong, but I want it. That feels authentic to me versus what I know or what my culture has identified to be good. And I think you can overcome that a lot of the time through meditation. I think a lot of the time you you receive messages through meditation from your higher self that makes it completely crystal clear that the path that you're taking is right for you,
Mm.
is the good path, is the right path for your purpose. And most of what meditation is just shutting off all the other things that all the other things that are learned, all the other things that you've been told. Um, that doesn't really happen unless you sit in silence a lot of the time, I think. I think it doesn't happen in the noise of everything that you've got going on in your life. Usually the reinforcement happens through silence and meditation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It's like there's so many things like vying for your attention on the day to day that like unless you can take that silent space and like develop a practice of doing that on like a daily basis and kind of let your mind unwind to where it's in this unwound state at least
Mhm.
once a day, you're gonna have these difficulties connecting. But it's like for me, I've developed a pretty solid meditation practice. It works for me in my life. If I don't do it, I notice it. And one of the things I've been doing more recently is like asking my higher self for one word that I need to focus on for that day, and I'll do it like in the morning. It's like yesterday the word was relaxation, even though I didn't want to do it and I fought against it all day. Today it was kind of more of the same, like relaxation, allow, and it's just like
Mhm.
it's really incredibly stressful for me to learn how to do that. But like the other way is also incredibly stressful for me. I'm in this state of like positive tension, which is a good thing.
It's really funny that you say that you've got this one word and it's allowed because um, I think that words are really, really, really powerful. I wanted I have this whole um, idea in my life that I'm going to come back in the next life and just be like a wordsmith of some sort. But I think what I was gonna say is I have this friend who does bracelets. It's called myintent.org, and what it is you put your word down on a bracelet that you wear every day, and it's a reminder that that's your word, that's what you want to work on. And I think that you could use it in any way, but the way I choose to use it, I choose a bracelet once a year. I keep that bracelet on all year, and or until I master that word, until I relieve myself of all of the resistance that exists with that word, so that it's completely natural to me all the time. It's like a muscle that I stretch. And then I pick my next word, and the next word kind of is, I graduate from one into the next step, so to speak. And my most powerful word that I ever wore was a lot. That year was huge. So I think, I think words, when you have them in front of you, when you have them on or wherever, it's just constantly in front of you, is a really good way of learning to exercise that resistance, and exercise learning to release distance. Allow is a big one.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned these words and kind of like moving on to the next word, because prior to allow, it seemed like the end of last year, my word was patience and standstill, which one came up from a tarot card reading and the other one came up from this daily Tao book that I read. But it was so weird because I was like so frustrated with everything in my life. Like, I'm just like, I just want all this stuff to move forward. And I kept pushing, and it's just like, nah, you just got to chill. And then it's like once I actually was able to move forward again, I like started getting all these speeding tickets in real life. And I was like, oh shit, this means I got to slow down now. And then it like transitioned.
That's so funny. How else could the universe send you that signal to slow down? Speed bump.
Right. Right. And then it's like, then it's just like allow. It's like, dude, you don't have to rush. Everything you need will be provided for you if you can just chill the hell out and just let it happen.
Yeah.
It's super
sometimes
funny.
Being is much more important than doing. Just be. And it's, I think sometimes you get a lot of just being than doing, especially in times when you feel like constantly nothing is going your way. Sometimes, a lot of the time when nothing's going your way, that's your signal to just stop. Just stop and let your higher self take the wheel.
I'm definitely at that space right now where I just have to ease into everything and just kind of let the flow of life take me.
There's a book that I'm reading right now. It's called The One Thing. I recommend anyone listening to this to get that book. I've bought it for I think probably at this point 15 people in my life. I'm passing them out like gifts to everybody. It's basically the idea, it's not the idea, it's really kind of an exercise to learn how to figure out what thing you want to achieve and work backwards to think, okay, well, what's the one thing, let's say you want to, I don't know, buy a car. Well, what's the one thing you have to do to be able to buy the car? Well, I have to make money. What's the one thing you have to do to make money? Well, I have to work. What's the one thing you have to do to work? And it goes on, it kind of breaks it down to where you get to a point, well, what's the one thing you have to do right now, today, this moment? And what's the one thing you have to do tomorrow? And it builds you this roadmap to get you to your final destination, whatever it is. And it's always really just one thing. It's a domino effect. It's push that first domino down, and it kind of, it could take, by the end of that domino effect, it could take down anything, really.
I really like how you lay that out, because that's kind of the stage that I'm in my life right now, is like having these bigger goals and then achieving littler goals to work towards it. And I think that that's one of the areas that sometimes people in the spiritual circle get tripped up about. They think that just holding the intention will manifest what they want without taking action on it on a continual, regular basis. And it's like, no, you have to actually do stuff, put yourself out there, take risks, and it's part action, part allow. And it's so weird to have to do that dance, I guess, because it is a dance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I think intention takes you very, very far, but it only takes you as far as you actually show up, to receive. And you
Hmm.
can't show up to receive if you're not doing anything. Get to put yourself in situations where what you intend to have happen to you, you make yourself available to receive them. And that's the other thing. I think another big, big word is receiving. I was doing this group meditation last night, and we had this partner event, this partner exercise where you partner up with someone, and through meditation, um, the facilitator, the guide, guides you through um, obtaining certain gifts for your partner that your partner needs in their life to be able to um, get to where they want to go. So at first you have a little talk with your partner, and they tell you what's going on, and then you, through meditation, gift them with what you want them to receive. And we got to the point in the meditation where there was this long buildup of, okay, well, you're coming now to face your partner after all this obtaining that you've done for them, all this gifting you built for them to give to them. And the meditation instructor goes, but the question is, are you ready to receive what they've been building for you? And
Mm.
it's really powerful because sometimes I think we get really caught up in the giving and doing and acting, and we don't ready ourselves for the receiving, and that is huge. It's huge. I think um, mastering oneself is learning to receive, mastering your value in this big picture, and accepting that. It takes courage sometimes, so receiving is huge, and intention takes you really far, but showing up is where the receiving happens. Showing up, being available, being at the job where you can get the raise, or being at in the career where you can take the next step. Not just intending that happens for you, not intending that someone um, just gifts it to you for free without you being available to them.
Hmm. An interesting thought occurred when you talked about how difficult receiving is. Like, I know that receiving is difficult for me, and it's actually something that I'm working on. I was able to receive in unhealthy ways at times in my life, but I typically tend to be more of a giver or a doer for other people in certain situations, which is actually really unhealthy to a lot of people. But like in regards to the receiving part in Eastern spirituality, like the feminine principle is supposed to be like the receptive in lots of ways. And I wonder if the difficulty in receiving in our culture is relative to the suppression of feminine energy in lots of ways. Like that's kind of what came to my mind. I don't really have another thought to add to it, but I'm just curious what your opinion
Uh,
might be.
Actually, that really resonates. I've never connected the dots in that way, and I think there's definitely something to that. There's definitely something um, the way I grew up anyway. I don't know that it was just because of the way I grew up, or if it was just me on a deep level. I had a really hard time receiving. I always felt like I should do. I should do for myself. I should make for myself. I should create for myself. And what that did was created resistance for me to receive when it was being handed to me by anyone other than myself, even if it was in my creation of that thing. And I don't know that the word is shame, but there was maybe some form of shame in receiving rather than creating for myself. And definitely that was a societal thing. That doesn't resonate to me as something authentic within me. That definitely resonates. I think there's definitely something to that. But I also think that I also think that the times that are happening now with this extreme emergence of masculine energy, that's almost a false masculine. It's almost a masculine that comes from a place of muscle rather than heart. I think is leading a path for us to really kind of break down as a society and accept femininity. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know that I'm using the right words to express what I mean, but I think that a feminine time is coming. I think people are starting to realize that the muscle masculine is not serving us, and that traits that are associated with the feminine, for example, empathy, the ability to feel instead of understand, truly put yourself in someone's feelings rather than just trying to understand that person, feeling that person. Those times are coming. I think people are starting to realize that that's ultimately going to be more beneficial than obtaining through muscle. And what I mean by
Absolutely.
muscle is false masculine energy.
No, I agree with that too. And a lot of the false masculine energy is based on fear, and the way that they go about getting over that fear is through like dominance or control and suppression of emotion, because we're, as men, we're taught not to feel emotions, that that's a weakness, when in reality it's a strength. I'm really like hung up on this concept that like vulnerability is the closest thing you can get to invincibility, when you can accept yourself as you are. And this modality that men present of like being invincible and like not having emotions is essentially the ultimate vulnerability. Because when you look at how shattered people get over very small things when they're in this he-man macho man state, it's funny, but it's really sad at the root of it. And like looking at the role models that a lot of men follow that are portrayed in our culture, it actually makes me sad. And as somebody who's had to do a lot of deep healing with how I reached out for attention, the way that I kind of approached the world, recognizing just the amount of hurt and like the deep emotional scars that most men in our culture carry with them, um, it's sad. And it is just a lot of chest beating, and like they're at like a very young emotional maturity level as a whole.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's really coming out of fear. A lot of the emotions that are associated with the false masculine, which is force and muscle, and I forget the other words that you mentioned, but they were really, really I think a lot of those come from fear. They come from fear, wanting control, fear of losing control.
Mm.
I believe that the true masculine allows the feminine to lead because they're not afraid of losing the position of power. And I believe that we're slowly evolving to get to that point. And it's going to take a lot of the false masculine to sort of surface in our society as we're seeing it happen now, for the tipping point to occur where people will, in a very obvious, blatant way, see that it's not serving them, that there needs to be another way to reach the goal of ultimate oneness, which is empathy.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the inherent fail safes in like that false masculinity, is that it's incredibly destructive, and eventually that destructiveness will, unfortunately, I mean, I guess it's fortunately, the fail safe is that it'll destroy that man's life, to where he eventually has to take a look at himself and say, what the hell am I doing with myself? How am I treating people like this? How, like, this is why I feel like this, because of me, and take accountability.
Yeah, 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 I totally agree. I think it's slowly coming to be. It'll take a while. It'll take a while, but we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like one of the things that, one of like my missions is to help men kind of like find their own strength, and just being comfortable with themselves and expressing their own journey, and like connecting with the feminine energy and respecting it, and recognizing that like all of us have both of these principles in us, and that the ultimate weakness is feigning strength, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
I
Fear
want
and
to take,
love, that's what it comes down to.
what's that?
I said fear and love. That's the only things it comes down to.
Oh, absolutely. There was a comedian, Bill Hicks. Do you ever listen to him?
No, I haven't.
He
I
talks
love
about,
stand-up comedy. That's good. Tell me.
yeah, check him out. You'll really enjoy his stuff, I feel like, because he has a very enlightened perspective, and he talks a lot about uh, just about like this kind of stuff. And at one point, he talks about like the eyes of fear and the eyes of love. And he's like, the eyes of fear want you to buy bigger guns and put more locks on your doors, and the eyes of love want you to see like the world as this total thing, like all this unification. Um, but it really is what it is, and pretty much every evil concept in the world is based in fear. Everything that's wrong with the world is based in fear. Greed is fear-based, fear of not having enough resources. I could keep going on, but like it's pretty self-evident.
Mm. Yeah. I think these things that come up for people that are just starting on their spiritual path, it may sound like it's a learned thing, or it's repeated, it's repeated sayings like fear and love, or everything happens for a reason, or things happen to you, not for you. And I think that they're not necessary. I think some people learn them, but I don't think that they're necessarily learned things. I think they're truths that people arrive to. And to those people listening that feel like it's a repetitive theme that are you there? I think I disconnected.
Yeah, I'm back. You're back. We're back.
Yeah, I was saying that I think that a lot of the sayings that come up, a lot of the knowings that come up, may sound repetitive to people that are just starting on their spiritual journey, but I think that they're higher knowings that you come to when you're ready, and they're truths that are there that you at different parts of your journey choose to receive, choose to accept, or choose to refuse. And that's not to say, I don't want that to come off as like this is the only way. It's absolutely definitely not. But I think that a lot of the time when things sound a little bit repetitive, when you say things or give ideas or discussions come up about certain ideas that may sound a little bit not taboo, but just repetitive to people that haven't arrived to the understanding of them yet, it sounds inauthentic. But really, when you start meditating, when you start doing all this stuff, when you start finding the noise, when you start really listening to your intuitive self, a lot of these truths are just things that you've always known that you've been conditioned to deny yourself of. Your connection to, for example, we're discussing that connection to the ultimate source that is all of us, that is one. You hear anyone from, I don't know, spiritual speakers like Abraham Hicks talking about that, and then you hear Oprah talking about it, and you hear, your neighbor talking about it. It's not just an idea that's taken on, it's in pop culture. It's always been there. It's knowings that certain people at different times in their lives learn to receive. And some of us have come online to them. Some of us are just coming online to them. And the beauty of it is that I think it exponentiates. I moved back 2.5 years ago. And even between then and now, I feel like all of a sudden the world is changing in terms of the understanding of consciousness. Just if you think a few years ago, everybody was walking around with their yoga mats, going to yoga, and now all of a sudden, you're seeing people with meditation beads and going to meditation class, learning about aromatherapy and things like that. So I think it's really starting to take on. I think people are starting to come online, and all it takes is you having conversations like the ones that you're having for things to resonate with people, to realize they're the only one that's coming to this truth on their own in their bedroom as they're meditating. It's things that have always been there. And there's, people there to talk to about this stuff. So
Absolutely. I think that that's one of the important things is like people finding that community and recognizing they're not alone in these experiences. Which is again part of the reason that I did this is because for me, my mental health and my addiction was an awakening to deeper spirituality. And like as far as seeing people in our culture like reaching out for yoga and meditation, it's again is almost kind of like that misaligned masculinity where our culture is demanding that we do these things essentially, not like not physically, but because of the amount of stress that we're under, the amount of tension that we're under, it's directing us towards that, I feel like, because although
Yeah.
we're capable of dealing with stress, we're not capable of dealing with stress as in this barrage that we get it from social media, from TV, from work. Like it's supposed to be a fight or flight mechanism, and
Yeah.
here we are in this daily hamster wheel of stress. So yeah, we need this stuff even more, and it is really is ancient. And I almost wonder if in some ways that was one of the things that allowed us to get to where we are is the fact that people practice a lot of these things and it was easier for them because they were able to shut down a lot of that programming, kind of that biological programming, and tap into the intuition, kind of like I was talking about earlier about like getting in that fear space of when you try to like let go of control and allow life to happen and not worry so much. Like I feel like they were able to do that, which is how we were able to get to where we are. And we're coming to a place again where we have to access that to move forward further.
Yeah, because we're so inundated. We're just there's images and things coming at us 100 miles an hour. I was listening to NPR a while ago, and they were saying that in one day, or not even in one day, maybe in 1 hour of our lives, current day, we are exposed to as much information as our ancestors were in their entire lifetime. You know,
Mm,
on your phone all day, there's images coming at you, there's advertisements coming at you, there's television, there's so much, and I think it's we're in a place where it's really easy to not listen. It's really easy to not listen to yourself. You have to actually make the time to be in silence. I think, you know, it's a rarity almost for me living in the city to be in a space where it's silent and I'm faced with my own thoughts.
mm.
Um, you know, so
That
yeah,
was
I think we need to make it an effort now. I think people are seeing that they need to make an effort to actually do that, to get to that place again that you were talking of that higher understanding.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate in some ways because I disconnected from really watching TV largely about shit almost a decade ago now. I mean, I've watched it sporadically here and there. I'll like take social media detoxes now, like so I'm in this different space than a lot of people. I've always been attracted to meditation and yoga, but it's amazing like how much those things kind of impact me. And I don't think some people recognize how much like the overwhelming amount of information affects them personally. Like for me, if I take a day and I shut my phone off and I disconnect from Facebook and like I'm away from all that stuff, I can physically feel it, not even only in my head, but in my body, in my soul, like how much better I feel, how much better I react to situations too. It's like we almost get intoxicated off of information now.
Yeah,
It's sad.
yeah, and I have this conversation with my brother often because we're only 3 years apart, but he falls under Gen X, and I'm somewhat in between Gen X and millennial. And um, he says, and I totally agree, that in the next few years, or in say the next generation's lifetime of finding careers, um, people are going to be paid for critical thinking because that's the only thing we don't really do anymore. You
Mm,
have the answers all in front of you always. You've got your phone at all times. You can Google anything. You can ask Alexa. You know, uh, you can find out information without having to work for it or think about it so much that it's actually changing the chemical makeup of our brains.
mm,
So the most valuable the most valuable service that companies will pay for in the future is going to be critical thinking, because that's going to be really the only thing that they'll probably need you for, aside from creativity, which is critical thinking, really. But everything else, almost everything else, machines can do, or will be able to do very shortly. Um,
Hmm.
so the practice of critically thinking, the practice of meditation, the practice of sitting in silence and allowing thoughts to come and processing them and understanding them is a muscle that um, needs to be stretched more often, especially now.
It's kind of humorous too, thinking about it. Like a lot of people actually enjoy all that information and all that stuff. I know that, like, for me personally on my journey, like I would use a lot of substances and I would like listen to TV or listen to something just to go to bed because I didn't want to be in my own mind. So a lot of people are actually using the problem that they can't sit and process their own thoughts as a solution for the problem that it's creating. So it's like
Yeah.
this giant feedback loop of suffering, really. And it's like when you can finally get comfortable and subtract yourself from that, it's so amazing. There was another comedian who I used to listen to, Doug Stanhope, and he used to say, "Have you ever tried to sleep sober?" And like at the time, I was like, "Holy shit, no! Like I can't sleep when I'm sober because that's when my mind comes out. Like, holy crap, I actually have to like think about my life and like process stuff that I'm trying to
Very
avoid."
good. That's funny.
And it's so funny now, being like 18 months free of all substances. I go to sleep so easy. Like I actually am so tired by the time it comes time to lay down. And a large part of the reason I'm able to do that is like being present with where my thoughts are at most of the day. Um, I don't do this every day, but like taking a daily inventory of like what I've been doing, being comfortable with where I'm at, and pretty much having gone through a lot of the stuff that some people never process in their life. Like my cache in my mind overall is completely clear, where my conscious is clear. If I make a mistake or if I do a wrong to somebody, I try to acknowledge it as soon as I'm aware of it so I don't have to carry it into the next day. That's such a
I
weird
like that
space to
idea,
be
clear your cache.
in.
I'm going to use that. I like that idea of clearing your cache daily or monthly or yearly, whatever.
For sure, because for me, like
Oh,
I had a psychotic episode, and like I like to say that that was like a hard factory reset of like emptying my mind of all the entertainment and culture I had consumed. The word entertainment, if I'm not mistaken, the etymological root of it means to contain within. And if you look at like what a lot of people are containing within themselves from our culture, violence, all this bullshit, I was grateful to have my mind kind of expel all of that, even though it was completely terrifying. And I don't want to go through it again, but also
wow,
really grateful.
that's really cool. I love hearing the breakdown of the word entertainment. I've never thought of it that way, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's actually frightening too when you
Uh,
think about what entertainment is and like just the stuff people watch, like horror films. It's like, why does that exist in our culture?
what is the purpose of that? I always said, what is the like? If fear is not a desirable feeling, why would you do that to yourself? I never understood. I never understood that. I'm not a scary movie person ever, but I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting that people feed off of that. It's like what you're putting inside of you really just manifests itself in your reality. And if I don't know, I've always been fascinated with people that like horror movies and scary movies and like inciting that sort of fear in their lives.
Yeah, I don't get it personally, but
So
I
can I
don't have
ask
to.
you, since you stopped, since you become sober, do you have more vivid dreams? Do you sleep with more vivid dreams?
Oh, everything in my life is so much more vivid and better. Like
Mm.
to anybody that uses any substances, like the biggest thing I would tell them is they don't realize how much they're shortchanging themselves. And granted,
Mm.
I'll say this in my own experience. I don't know what moderation is, and I would say that some people can use certain things in moderation. Um,
Hmm.
Not my experience, but I also know that pot stays in your system for 30 days, And although it might not have a big impact on you consciously, what does that do on other levels? And I think that one of the issues with substances that people in our culture kind of don't understand, I mean, especially in the spiritual community, they talk about not being materialistic, but using the substance to connect to their higher power. In my understanding, it's all around me. I don't need a middleman, I guess, and I'm not really connecting with it in its essence if I need to ingest something to witness it.
Right, yeah. I think, with certain substances, people treat them as a gateway to that understanding, but definitely I think the majority of the time it gets abused. The majority of the time it's recreational. And you definitely don't need it. You don't need it. It could be, some substances could be a tool. Most of them are not. But it's not that you don't have those tools within you to begin with. You just need to seek deeper or further, or you know, you can source them externally through people who teach a higher teaching without needing the substance to get you there, for sure. But yeah, I asked that question because I think it's always interesting to find out how people. I am fascinated with dreams and sleep and dreaming, and I find it fascinating how people's experiences change with dreams when they change either their lifestyle or what they eat, how they consume. Um, I think if you become aware of it, it really does change the way that you dream.
Hmm.
For me,
Absolutely.
being such a vivid dreamer, that's like a whole different life I'm leading. I feel like I'm leading this life and I'm leading the life in my dreams every time when I go to sleep. So
I really want to work on astral projection and stuff like that, but I feel like it just has to happen. It's interesting that you like talk about sleep though overall. I had sleep apnea. I have a mask for it now where I get oxygen. That's changed my relationship to sleep. I actually had to develop a sleeping schedule.
mhm.
So many, like I've literally had to change my whole life, and all of that stuff is like completely different to me now. And it's weird to see the broader implications of something that I think a lot of people take for granted, and how much every part of my waking life impacts my sleep overall, in my dreaming and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
still, oop, you still there?
And dreams can be used as a tool. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So yeah, I think dreams can definitely be used as a tool to kind of restart. And you were talking earlier about clearing your cache. For myself, and I know a lot of people, that is clearing your cache. You've got some momentum going during the day. You've got some sort of energy happening. You've got a good day or a bad day that just unravels itself to continually give you what you've been getting that day. And when you go to sleep, it kind of just it's a starting point all over again. It's like a refreshing point. When you wake up the next day, it doesn't have to be connected to the day before at all. So
Hmm.
getting good sleep and uh, clearing your conscience to allow yourself to dream good dreams is, for me, really important. For me, it's an instrument for my day, really. And I remember my dreams really vividly when I wake up. So it definitely serves as like the it's the mood setter of my day every day.
Hmm. I really like that concept.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions.
Sure.
Um, hmm. This is kind of a fun one. What
Okay.
superpowers do you possess, or what would you want?
Okay, I definitely know what I want, and I'm waiting for Elon Musk to invent teleportation because I feel like that would be the most useful thing in my life if I
Hmm.
could just teleport from one place to another. A, because I don't like being late. I am late sometimes, but I don't like being late, and I think teleportation would resolve that whole issue. And B, I think it's just like there's a lot of times in my life where I'm traveling from point A to point B, especially living in LA, where I just don't see the purpose of it. I feel like it's just a waste of time. I wish I could just get there already. So definitely I want that superpower. The superpower that I feel like I have this, I could call it a superpower because it's my favorite thing about myself. I have this high level of empathy and understanding for people right as soon as I meet them. So the second I meet someone, I can already kind of step into their shoes and feel them and really understand who they are just by being around them for very brief amounts of time. And that has been truly a superpower for me in the way that I interact with people, the way that I learn from people, what I choose to gain from them, what I choose not to gain from them, how I choose to just interact with them. So high level of empathy is my superpower.
I always have a question for people that I identify as empaths because I know that I do as well. Do you feel that you actually that's a skill that you've had to work on to kind of remove yourself from some of the negative effects of empathy, which can be taking other people's emotions on to a destructive space for you?
Oh my God, yeah. I think I think we're given empathy from the start, and we don't know what it is from the beginning. At first, maybe when you're a child, you kind of just always feel weird and emotional, and as you go through your teen years, before you have some sort of awakening to it or understanding of it, you feel all this angst and just just deep impressions and deep feelings of everything that happens, perhaps deeper than those around you, and you don't understand it, what your problem is. Or that's how it was for me anyway. And then finally, when you get to a point of understanding that you're an empath and that you're truly just in a state of feeling other people's feelings all the time, it takes so much conscious exercise and effort to not take on what they're offering and learn to tap in and tap out of that.
Mm,
Tapping out of that sometimes is really, really hard. But the evolution for me has been like the evolving of my understanding of my empathetic side has been understanding, spirituality, that certain people are there to experience their experience, that I don't necessarily, um, it's not necessarily that I judge their experience because I definitely don't. I feel their experience, but I shouldn't wish differently for them. I shouldn't wish differently for them because that is whatever they're experiencing is serving them best. So if I truly do believe, and I stand in the belief that everything that's happening is happening for you, and that your inner guidance system is guiding you to the best version of possible things that could possibly happen, then whatever it is for others, it is for others. And um, I then have a choice of tapping out of feeling what they're feeling if it's not serving me. You know,
absolutely.
it's definitely learning the exercise of choosing not to subscribe. When it's not serving you, learning to identify that it's not serving you, and then choosing to subscribe when it's not serving you. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's like one of the things that like I feel that people in empathy circles or people that identify as empaths will kind of just like get into the victim role. I can't be around these people because of this. And it's like I'm not saying you should use discernment if you don't feel that you're strong enough to handle that. At the same time, it is like a muscle where the more I can kind of step outside of my comfort zone and be around other people, the more strength I have to help other people by just being empathetic, but not be by being steamrolled by it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think um becoming becoming or uh, I think is misguided. It's completely misguided to the purpose. The purpose of empathy is truly getting to a point of oneness. What we were talking about earlier, understanding that you may be one with other people, with other species, with other races, with other things that you have otherwise found resistance towards. And empaths are kind of like on a speedway to that, to you, for example, you get faced with people that you feel a resistance towards. Say someone that's causing hurt to other people's lives. Say, for example, um, the first example that comes to mind is a shooter that goes into a school, and instantly your first reaction is to feel resistance and hatred and whatever it is that comes up, right? Empaths, generally, the first thing we do is think, okay, well, what has that person been through? What is that person feeling? And a lot of the time, it's a lot. A lot of the time, you just want to tap out. You don't even want to understand. You don't want to be in a place where you even understand what was going on through that person's mind. But what does that create? It creates less separation between you and the other, and one step closer to the idea of oneness, that we're all from one source, that we're here to experience different things, and their experiences are what they are. And the sooner or the faster that you learn to understand that person's experiences, feel that person's feelings, the faster you evolve, the faster our species evolves. You know, it's empathy is probably the biggest reason vegetarians or vegans become vegan, right? They feel for the thing that they're killing to eat, so they don't do it anymore. Yeah. So, but again, I don't think that empaths that are just starting to understand this trait about themselves should constantly feel like they need to step into that. A lot of the time, it slows you down from best serving others around you. If you're constantly in the phase of feeling for others and taking on their weight and their heaviness, you may not be able to best serve those around you. So
That's a very interesting thing, but I definitely find that that is true as well. Like, it's something you have to learn to kind of acclimate yourself to over time. Just like
yeah,
if you try to lift like 400 pounds when you've never lifted any weight before, you're gonna like not
yeah,
be able to
exactly.
do it.
Yeah, you can't take on the weight of the world if you haven't learned that it's a choice, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, and I think the people that victimize themselves, empaths that feel victimized by it, don't realize that it's a choice. They haven't come to the understanding that they can turn off that part of themselves when they feel like they need to better serve those around them.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that a lot of people trip themselves up on, I know that it was true for me on my journey, is feeling like I had to resolve people's problems for them. But I also realize now I can't resolve anybody's problems but my own. I can be there and be supportive of them, listen to them,
Mhm.
but sometimes offering solutions to other people can do more harm than it actually can good.
Yeah, because they're on their journey, right? They're showing up to the lessons that they're meant to learn, and sometimes when you give them the key to solve those problems, you're kind of cheating them of the experience. I know
Hmm.
that sounds kind of, to some people, it might sound like you're denying them of some sort of fact that will help them get through the hard times. It's not really about that. It's more about just understanding that some people have not gone through all of the lessons that you've gone through to understand that lesson, to understand that thing. And so they may be in step, 3 of 10, whereas you may be in step 10 and just giving them the answer. They need to go through the rest of the steps to really come to that full understanding of what it is that they need to learn in that lesson.
Yeah, it's like I can give you the
Yeah.
cheat sheet, but it's not going to help you overall.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it comes back to what we said in the beginning of this interview, where we were talking about, um, you know, you can have an understanding of something, or you could have heard something many times, and then you don't have the full understanding of it until you've gone through enough experiences where all of a sudden you hear it differently.
Hmm.
It rings a different way. So,
Absolutely. I feel like I could talk to you for hours on end and not get out of it, but I also recognize that like you probably have to get on with your day.
well,
Um,
this has been very enjoyable.
oh, I've really
Always
enjoyed it a
love
lot.
conversations like this.
Yeah, I hope that you can come on again sometime and like
Yeah,
we can delve more into some other stuff.
absolutely. I would love that.
So I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna read something from a daily meditation book, two different daily meditation books that I read, but I'll let you pick which one. One is based on Native American wisdom and philosophy. The other one is based on Taoist philosophy.
Mm, let's go with the Taoist philosophy.
Okay.
Although
So
they both sound brilliant.
I'll take a picture and send you the other one after we get done talking so you can
Okay.
check it out.
Okay.
So this is for the 79th day of the year, which is today if I counted properly. And it's entitled Spring. Sun and moon divide the sky. Vagrance blooms on pearwood bones. Earth awakens with a sigh. Wanderer rebels on the path alone. It is a time of equinox, when day and night are briefly equal. This day signals the beginning of spring, the increasing of light, and the return of life to the frozen earth. Of course, this day only represents a moment in time. Spring has long been returning, and we know that summer will soon follow. The cycle of the seasons will continue in succession. There is no such thing as a true stopping in time, for all is a continuum. Nature makes its own concordances as mere outgrowth to its movement. It is we who see structure and give names to pattern. But who can begrudge temporary pleasures to a solitary traveler? Let us go out and enjoy the day, revel in the coming of spring, rejoice in the warming of the earth. For though the ground may be covered with frost, movement and growth are taking place all around us. Beauty bared fills our eyes and makes us drunk. As we wander the endless mountains and streams, filling our lungs with the breath of the forest, let us take comfort in being part of nature, for life has enough misery and misfortune. Philosophy reminds us enough of the transience of life. Give us the charm of the ephemeral and let it silence all who would object.
I love that. I love that so much. Can I share something with you?
Absolutely.
So it's perfect that we picked that book, because just before I called you, and we were talking about this before we started, we said, let's pick the book at the end and see if it's a synchronicity, and it sure was. So just before I called you, I celebrated Persian New Year with my family, which happens every year at the exact moment in time when winter turns to spring. So Persians celebrate New Year right in that second where it shifts from winter to spring. And that was right before I called you, about an hour before I gave you this call. So I love that I picked that, and it resonated. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. That book overall is phenomenal. I've been reading it for like a year now, so I'm starting to go back through the stuff that I started with, and I just fall more and more in love with it. Taoist philosophy is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of unfolds. Like it's like I picture it as this origami that unfolds into a million layers. The more you understand, you can read the same sentence 100 times, and just every time it resonates differently.
Yeah, it's really funny too because it gets more complex, but it also gets simpler.
Yeah, and just every sentence, I feel like it's always really, really small. But
You cut out there for a second. I'm sorry.
that's okay. I totally agree. I think Taoist, even just each quote that I read within Taoism is so profound, but so simple. It's like such a basic sentence that means so many different things in different parts of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. They're masters of like crystallizing really complex thought in very basic terms, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So the next thing, and this is how we'll end it, I'll give you a chance to respond to the card, then we'll cut it off there. Before I get there, thank you so much for coming on, Bita. I really appreciate it. This has been
You're very welcome. Thanks for asking me.
Absolutely. So here's what I'm going to do with this card. I'm going to ask you to tell me a number, and then I'm going to take that many cards off the top of this deck, and then I will draw that card.
Okay, 18.
18? 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now, do you want your card to be the 18th card? Or do you want me to take 18 cards off and your card the next? Take 18
cards. No, I
cards.
wanted to get the 18th one, yeah.
Okay. Oop, it's upside down.
What is that? I can barely see it. Can you read that to me?
It's the Ace of Stones, the foundation of life.
Oh, wow. Wow. So what does that mean? Do we know?
It actually came up in my daily card readings that I do recently. but I'm going to ask you what stands out the most to you on that image, if you can see it.
I see some patterns on the rock.
Okay.
That's the first thing that shows up.
So for me, in regards to you, it means that you can recognize patterns in things. You can see the larger picture of everything, and that you also gain a lot of wisdom from looking at these patterns and seeing how they play out in your life. I'm going to give you a more
That's
book.
absolutely true.
I'm so glad. I know that that's like one of the things that like really helps me a lot is pattern recognition. I'm going to give you a more book version of what this means, because I'm not
Okay.
super familiar with this yet, although I don't like doing the book as much. I just want to see what comes up for it. So it says, the most potent act of mind is to conceive of an idea and manifest it into practical material reality. Kind of what we were talking about, like intention and like all of that stuff earlier. This means being able to formulate and marshal your thoughts to bring about a real world change or transmutation of a wish, dream, or desire and making it physically happen. And just some other things it says is the concept of the material world as a solid, unchanging thing has evolved with our understanding of the cosmos. So really what I get from this is your ability to see these different patterns in your life has been one of your greatest assets to help you develop the life you want and also help you develop yourself as you want to be. It's really unlocked you to you and unlocked you to your unlocked your dreams for you.
Wow, that's really profound and very true. Very true. I feel like every time something happens, I relate it back to something that's already happened in my life to see if I see a pattern. So, wow, that's really cool. That's really cool.